The Washington feeding industry began in the 1950s when feeding of grains to livestock became popular. There are about 10 family-owned cattle feeding facilities in Washington. This is a tradition that has been passed down over multiple generations and continues to be passed down for hopefully future generations. The Washington feedlot capacity today is about 250,000 head of one-time capacity. These feedlots market over 350,000 cattle per year. The Washington fed cattle plants process approximately 950,000 head per year. As a result, the Washington cattle industry attracts over 600,000 head of additional cattle coming from throughout the Northwest to support the livelihoods of ranchers throughout the entire region. The feedlots play a critical role in the cattle industry. Without the feedlots, the cattle in the state of Washington that are produced on Washington ranches would all have to go to the Midwest, exporting one of our greatest resources that exists in this state. Feedlots work with nutritionists to develop a feed program for the cattle that ensure not only healthy animals, but a beef product for Northwest consumers that is safe, wholesome, and of the highest quality. These nutritionists focus on using locally produced grains, hay, and agricultural byproducts. The U.S. beef industry has a carbon footprint that is less than 50% of any beef produced throughout the world. The Northwest beef industry has the advantage of having a carbon footprint that is 1/3 smaller than any beef coming out of the Midwest. This is a result of producing local beef, recycling agricultural byproducts such as sweet corn, vegetables, and potatoes, and benefiting from the utilization of green hydropower. In fact, EPA scientists estimate that the U.S. cattle industry contributes only 2% of all of the greenhouse gases produced in the United States. Washington feedlots provide to Washington ranchers an important local marketing option rather than forcing them to ship cattle to the Midwest. This saves them approximately $25 million a year in just transportation costs. Washington is the hub of the beef industry in the entire Northwest. This is where ranchers can ship their cattle to local feedlots and to local packing plants. Washington feedlots provide a critically important supply of fat cattle to Washington packers that ensure stability of local sources for farmers, ranchers, and businesses throughout this region. The feedlot industry in Washington supports local agricultural industry by purchasing and feeding over $100 million in locally produced feed, including hay, grain, corn, barley, and wheat, recycled potatoes, corn, and vegetable byproducts, and in addition to ethanol byproducts and distillers' grain. These are used to design diets by nutritionists for an extremely healthy product that not only helps produce high-quality animals, but delivers a delicious product for Washington consumers. A recent Eastern Washington study estimated that cattle drink between 8 and 17 gallons per day, depending on the time of year and weight in the cattle. In addition, water is used at feedlots for environmental compliance, for dust control as required by the state. This includes alley dust management by spreading water and pen dust management by sprinkling in pens. This also helps with animal welfare, which makes cattle more comfortable during hot summer days and improves the overall health of animals as a whole. The feedlots in the state of Washington continue to implement strong conservation practices. This includes capturing excess stockwater tank runoff that can be used for environmental practices and other agricultural uses. In addition, the feedlots have managed the water usage based upon how many cattle are actually in the feedlot. Many feedlots throughout Washington use what's called low-flow water tanks. This allows for water tanks to minimize the amount of excess water that is available, but providing enough water for the cattle for their daily needs. In addition, feedlots have provided excess water with natural nutrients to adjacent fields, reducing the need to use fresh water and synthetic high-carbon footprint fertilizers. The feedlots today are being challenged on many fronts, including the overall economic environment, regulatory burdens, and the overall production costs and operating costs that continue to rise. The family farms in the state of Washington and the family-owned feedlots in the state of Washington heavily rely upon the stockwater exemption to produce high-quality beef for consumers in the Northwest. The stockwater exemption is a critical part of the operations, and the majority of feedlot operations rely on the stockwater exemption to deliver the water to the cattle and direct operations. Limiting this exemption means a reduction of feeding and the reduction of potential packing capacity in the state of Washington. This will lead to a significant loss of cattle production throughout the entire region. In addition to risking processing plant closures, which happened in Boise, Idaho in 2005, it could cost the state thousands of jobs and have a dramatic adverse impact to local communities. If this occurs and the feedlot industry becomes under serious risk of loss, this would require that ranchers throughout Washington would have to ship their cattle into the Midwest, which is about 600,000 cattle, and would cost them about $25 million per year. In addition, the Northwest consumers would not have available to them locally produced beef from Washington producers. Today, the economic impact would be severe. Over the last year and a half, feedlots have lost over $50 per head, which is approximately $17.5 million in just the cattle that have been marketed to the Washington feedlots. The economic stability of the feedlots are hinged upon the ability to have access to stock water and to be able to provide not only water for the animals, but also water for operations and environmental compliance.